Okay. Yesterday, we were here and we were talking about the organic food, so none of those chemicals, nothing added to that food. Today, this first slide here, when we're talking about additives, it does the complete opposite. We are adding as much as we possibly can to these foods. Some of it for the benefit of us, and some of it maybe not so much. Just it kind of depends upon what it's doing for that product. So, adding nutrients, preserving the quality of it, aiding in the process of it, and then also enhancing that flavor and color. So salt, for example, like I said, salt enhances flavor. It's a preservative. We see salt in almost all the food that we eat. This is how, going back in history, they would kill a cow and you would put everything into beef jerky because otherwise you needed to eat it that day. Or otherwise it starts to go bad. So we salted those things to preserve them. When adding nutrients, sometimes we can add a nutrient to a product that it doesn't have it in there. So right now you can find orange juice that is fortified with calcium, which means it naturally isn't in there, but we've figured out how to put calcium in there. There's bread that's fortified with calcium. We live in the Midwest. We drink milk. You go to either one of the coasts, they don't drink milk like we do, so we needed to figure out how to get them more calcium. They started putting it in other products that we eat. Now, if it says that it's enriched instead of fortified, that means they've actually stripped it out and then we put it back in. So when you have white bread, it has bleached, enriched flour. They've literally taken the flour, they've bleached it, they've stripped off all the nutrients to make it this pretty white color. And then since they've stripped it, they now have to re-add back in some of the nutrients. Same thing with rice, white rice. Not good for you. It doesn't really do anything for you. Doesn't have any nutritional value. Instead, you should eat brown rice, or you should have whole grain bread instead of all the stuff that's been bleached just to make it look white and look pretty. Okay. For the flavor and the colors, like boxed macaroni and cheese, that actually is really white. But we eat with our eyes, so white macaroni and cheese doesn't look as appealing, so they make it orange by adding food coloring to it. But then Kraft a couple of years ago said, we're going to make it a little more natural. We're going to get rid of some of those food dyes because there are people that are allergic to it, and realize between like cayenne pepper and paprika, and I think there's one more spice, that it can give it that orangey color. So they've actually added that into the powder. That way then you can actually change that color into more of an orange and a little more natural versus all the different chemicals. There's about 600 of these additives that any food company can use without having to get special approval. It's a large list. But if it doesn't fit in that 600, then they do actually need to have approval in order to be able to use it. If they can't find something in that 600 to make it work, it's probably not good for us to eat. That's already a lot on that list. So when we're looking at our labels, when we look at the front of the box, and we're going to kind of look at all different sides of the box, we're going to find that common name and the form of our food. Our weight and volume includes all the liquid. Name and the address of where it was manufactured and produced. And then the list of all of our ingredients in there. Real important to kind of have all of these pieces together. So when we look at that picture there, what would be the common name and form of this food? When we're looking at this picture here. What? Crackers. It's a small word, not Ritz. Ritz is the brand, and it means they're going to be a circle with the little holes in it. They're just crackers. Okay? So if we look at this one, it's the common name and the form of this food. Oatmeal. We could add oatmeal with flaxseed, but that's not the first thing that draws our eyes in. It's usually the 100 calories and then the lime green of apple cinnamon. What about these ones? Chips. These ones we would say the apple chips because it's, otherwise chips would identify it as potatoes. Okay. You're like, I don't know, I've never seen that box before.
Baking mix.
Yeah, just baking mix. You don't know what you're actually gonna make with it until you turn it around. Do you want pancakes, waffles? Do you want muffins? Do you want like altars? So it's kind of like the foundation when we're looking at some of those items. So pay attention, because sometimes you can grab sometimes the wrong thing. That weight and volume, if you have like a can of green beans, it includes all the liquid inside of there. You're paying for the liquid that, what are you going to do with those green beans with that liquid on it? Pour it down the drain, right? So that is included in this. Now that name and manufacturer, currently right now, there's always some food item that's on a recall. Okay, so go back several years ago, they had some Chobani yogurt that was on a recall. So Ms. Melsidig and I both had that same product. So we had this yogurt. You know, when you open up yogurt, a little bit of water at the top, so you stir it in. So she stirs hers in at lunch, and she takes a bite of it, and she's like, just taste it off. So she threw it away and didn't eat any more of it. And then that night on the news, they said if it was manufactured at this particular location between this date to this date, it's all been contaminated, and throw it away. I had like 6 or 7. She had about the same in her fridge. So you threw them away. You went to the website. You plugged in how many of them you had. They sent you coupons to go back and replace them. But you needed to know, where did it come from? Just this morning, read another article on onions. If these certain onions have gone through one manufacturing company, then you need to throw them away because they all have salmonella in it. They have about 150 cases with about 5 plus maybe people that have died from it. Have you looked at an onion? There's no printed label, nothing. Where is it coming from? So their recommendation was, if you don't know where it came from, like you didn't go out to what's the garden place out here? Cherry Creek, thank you. Cherry Creek. Like if you didn't go to like Cherry Creek to get your onions, I would just throw them away. Because salmonella is not something you want to mess with. That's one thing that can make you pretty sick and can end up in the hospital. And then we got to list every single ingredient in that food, from biggest to smallest. Even if there's a couple of drops, you have to list it, because especially for those that are dealing with food allergies, it can make them very sick. They could actually die from it. So if you have a peanut allergy or a tree nut allergy, not only do you have to read the ingredients, you have to read on the box to see if it was manufactured in a location with nuts, because that's how serious some allergies are for some people. Just kind of depends. Okay, we got to list everything in there. So how many of you have had a can or a bottle of Mountain Dew before? Raise your hand. Okay, probably just about everyone in the room. How many of you have read the ingredients list on there? Only one. Anyone want to take a guess of what ingredient number 3 is? Okay, no, but one of our top 2 numbers. What's another one you think? Or think logically. It's a beverage. Water. Okay. Any other thoughts on what number 3 is? No, but worth a shot. Number 1 ingredient, carbonated water. Number 2, high fructose corn syrup. Number 3, concentrated orange juice and other natural flavors. Weird, isn't it? Yeah. So the orange juice in the frozen, they actually use that in making of Mountain Dew. So if you think about it, if you've had that Mountain Dew, that little bit of tanginess is coming from that orange juice. Now, there's not enough orange juice in this to say I can drink this for breakfast. Okay? But there is some in there. It's not that it's bad for you to have, but it was just weird to think about that. Why is there orange juice in there? Now it maybe makes more sense when you look at some of those Kickstarts that are made by Mountain Dew with more orange juice flavor. It's coming right off of one of their main products that they made. And then you kind of keep going down. They got to list all the dyes that are in there as well. Like I have an aunt who's allergic to like red dye number 9 or something. I don't know exactly what number it is. But anything with orange, yellow, or red, she has to have limited on those items. Cheetos, any orange cracker, cheesy cracker, macaroni and cheese, cough drops that are red have that dye in there as well. If she has too much of it, it really just kind of upsets her stomach and her intestine. So it's not a lethal allergy where like some peanuts, people go into anaphylactic shock and can't breathe. But you need to have it all listed on there. We also look at that UPC code. You guys are growing up in the era where you see those barcodes, you scan it, it tells that computer all kinds of information, tells them the price of it, the product of it, down to the color of it. They identify very, very carefully of what everything is. Makes it really simple and easy when you're going to pay. When my husband and I were first married, we lived in Fort Dodge, and the Fairway in downtown that had not been updated for years still had this sticker on every product. So you had to stand in line for like a half an hour to pay because they had to pick up every item and look at the sticker, and the cashier had to put in like $2.99. You hope she didn't hit an extra number because then you were paying $20 for that item instead of $2 for that item. But they eventually updated their system. Then those dates. This is where I just talked about that Chobani yogurt. All important. When was it packaged? So we want to know those dates of when that was manufactured. Pull and sell date is the last time the store should be selling these products. So they've kind of reached their limit. But it is okay to eat in a short time frame. So if you go to Sunshine and go to the back of the store where like the eggs are and the meat products, you'll see a little table, sometimes a grocery cart on either side. All of those food items have reached their date. They're selling them usually at half price. It's not that it has molded or any of that stuff, but if you like that box cake mix and you are going to make a cake in the next couple weeks, you can absolutely use some of those, especially if you're going to apply any heat to them. But the store has to get rid of them at that point. They can't keep it on their shelf. Expiration is like the last day you should consume. That would be on your gallons of milk. Now, if you haven't opened a gallon of milk and you've reached the expiration date, you're not going to have extra bacteria in there because it hasn't been exposed in the air to go into that. So you could take a gallon of milk that hadn't been opened yet and go like 2 days past the date, as long as you like consume it all at that point. Well, that's a lot of milk to kind of go through, which we've done this in our house. We've actually then made it into pudding or done it into something else and used it in a baked product. And then I don't have any issues with it. Freshness would be like your bakery goods. So it's best that day. And then as days go on, it gets worse. So you just have to think about when you're buying those groceries, when are you going to actually do that? When are you going to use that bread? Get it to as close as you can possibly have it. We then look at the back side or the side of the box, and we start looking at a little closer into that nutritional part of it. And this really breaks down what we're eating in our food. Okay. When we start to break that down, it tells us a lot of information about it. It's going to tell us what a serving size is. It's going to tell us how many servings are in this particular container, and then our calories, our fats, our sodium, our carbohydrates, or sugars, proteins, all the way down. You really have to look at that number 1 and number 2 piece, way up at the top. What is considered a serving size, and how many are in this whole container? This is macaroni and cheese. A serving size is 1 cup. That's like a hand. Guessing many of you have opened up a box of macaroni and cheese and eaten the whole box. I know we can in our house. My son can down a whole box. My daughter almost some days can down a whole box of macaroni and cheese. So if they do, we got to take all of this information and now double it. If you're trying to look at those calories. A can of pop is usually a serving size, 12 ounces. But actually a cup is 8 ounces. Now, when you start to get into bottled pop, some are 16 ounces, 20 ounces, 24 ounces. Are they all a serving or are they not a serving? So you have to read each label separately. It used to be a bottle of pop was like 2.5 servings. Well, whoever did the math to figure out what their actual full calories are. So just really read each of those. This one on these chips, there's not a lot of them that'll do this, but this one does. It has what a serving size is 1 ounce. Well, who knows what 1 ounce is in these? It's about 12 of these apple chips, but then it says it's 2.5 servings in the whole package. Then they've also added the second label, said if you eat the whole package of this, then here's the full amount of calories and everything. So you have to read each package can be different on how many crackers count as that serving. And then that last piece is looking at that nutritional value. So that's at the bottom of there, and it's based upon a 2,000 calorie diet. That's an average diet is 2,000 calories. Most of the gentlemen in this room, because your bodies are still growing physically, you're probably averaging 2,500 calories a day. And then if you're active in football right now, you're probably over 300 or 3,000 calories a day. And you just naturally eat more because you're starving, because you're very, very active. Girls that are involved in any of our sports currently right now, you're hovering at that probably 2,500. Girls are a little more closer to 2,000 calories is what they need, because girls' bodies, for the most part, are done growing in height. So you need less. Yes, Emily, you're not going to get any taller. Hate to tell you that. Okay. Okay. Oh, I forgot to sign your guys' exam. Go ahead and get out your computer, and we are going to go into Schoology for this assignment. So it's the first one called Smart Consumer Worksheet. I'll get it signed and put the due date in just a second here. But I just want to walk you through expectations from my side when it comes to assignments. So the first part is matching fill in the blank. If at any point in time behind any of these words there's a parentheses like 2 or 3, then it's used more than once. So I identify that for you right away, so you don't have to take a guessing game on which one would be used more than once. In the first section, there isn't any. I don't think there's any in this particular assignment. Then there's another section of matching, filling in those words. Questions 3 and 4. So question 3 is looking at strawberry Pop-Tarts. You have that ingredients list, the nutritional fact, and then there are 10 questions having to read that particular label. And then you have a can of Coke, answering, some very similar questions. This is going to be due on Monday when you walk into class. You are going to have the rest of class time to work on it. So looking at first period, over half of everyone got it done. So no homework then for this weekend. Make sense? Okay. So you've got work time